Let's chat about narcissistic personality disorder and if it can be treated or changed or worked with. So I put a post up on Instagram and it really took off. So when some of them take off, I'm like, okay, I'm going to see like what about this was, resonating with people. And there's the odd person, obviously, that misconstrues what I'm saying and just feels like they have to add their 2 cents into the comments, which is fine. So the post was, you glow differently when you aren't living with someone who has an undiagnosed, untreated personality disorder. And what it was a spin-off of a quote I saw from Femme Power Inc. And theirs said, you glow differently when no one's dusty-ass, undiagnosed son is stressing you out, which I didn't like that because I don't really like to just talk about someone's dusty ass son. It's funny and it's catchy, but I didn't want to. So I thought that's a really good concept because it's true. Who you surround yourself with, and especially who you live with and who you're in a relationship with, absolutely affects every single part of your life, guaranteed. And it's not until you are out of the chaos for a good amount of time to be able to tell. Not that we're perfect, we have our own work, but to be able to really tell, like, this chaos was not generated by me. It was in reaction and response to what was going on around me. The lack of respect, the lack of regard for my boundaries, the lack of honor and respect and care and protection and accountability. So just with that quote, a couple of women said, well, narcissistic personality disorder cannot be treated. And so I wanted to talk about this here because there's a few things. You have left one of these relationships. It's very common to think, was it really that bad? Maybe if I had stuck it out, it would have changed. Maybe he's changing for the next person. This is common, right? To think, oh, they're in a new relationship. Maybe they're not doing that to them. Well, if they actually have NPD, and some of them have what I believe, right? I'm not able to diagnose anything like this, but I've just worked with enough women in these relationships, getting out of these relationships in the last 6 years, that I have seen some stuff that's just like, wow. So there's like there is a spectrum to this shit, right? So some of it is just beyond psychotic, and some women actually fear for their children's safety. So some of these guys you could trust, maybe they're not super responsible, maybe they don't do things the way you think they should, and they maybe aren't following perfect safety rules, looking out for the kids like you would, guaranteed. But there are some that you're like, yeah, I could send my kids with him and not necessarily worry something bad is going to happen to them. But then there are some women that have a very real fear for their children's safety in this. And so there's a spectrum that I've seen, okay? So back to the point of this topic of narcissism, which I've said I wasn't going to stop talking about, but it still comes up on my page because it's a lot of women find my stuff. The roots of what I'm doing here right now is helping women recover on the other side of this type of abuse because it is his own animal. It is not an easy process. It is possible if you are doing the work to actually move through it and doing the work, not sitting in therapy talking about them over and over and the abuse and all that. There's a whole new way to do this. But if you're wondering, would they have changed? So the answer is no, because they have not been treated in order to change. So typically these guys end up going into therapy because you've left them an ultimatum, right? You've said, if you don't go, I'm out of here. And they're like, oh shit, I better walk the walk here. But you notice it doesn't stick, it doesn't stay. And the deep core issue of their lack of respect for you and regard for your feelings and what you want is going to be there despite some of the outward little tweaks they might do to appear as though they are doing the work. So when they go to therapy, they are probably talking about poor me, my childhood, how she's nagging me, how she doesn't give me sex, how I don't get affection anymore, and she's constantly bitching at me, or she's saying these nasty things to me, but not saying, none of the stuff is being talked about what they're doing, right? So even if they do go to therapy, they're not treating the core of the NPD, personality disorder, which cannot be treated with a therapist anyways. It needs to be like a psychologist, like a doctor needs to be in there treating it, possibly medication. But that person who has that personality disorder, or even just strong traits of it that are causing a lot of problems and chaos and pain for the people around them, they have to be the ones that are doing it for themselves, not because they've been given an ultimatum by their mamas to go to therapy, right? Ladies, we got to take our own responsibility for this. I'm honestly, like, seriously, especially you've been in one of these relationships, you're terrified to get into another one. So I'm also talking to you about, like, don't bother continuing on with someone that you feel you need to change or fix. All right. You share your experiences. You share openly. You share what you need and want. You have your boundaries, and let them do what they're going to do or not do. And then you get to decide within that if this is something you want to continue with from your own self-sourced state of knowing what it is that you want. And what actually is more powerful for us women is knowing what we don't want first. Yes, part of manifesting and creating our life vision is knowing what we do want, but a lot of times when we have just been living for everyone else, we have no fucking idea what we want. So you start with what you don't want again, what you would never want again, right? And so you have to be aware of this. We have to fix ourselves in the sense of fix our need to fix a man, to mother a man, to think we have to mold and shape them to become what it is we need. And we're never going to find a perfect partner, but you certainly don't want someone that breaks all of your deal breakers, or the ones who have nothing as far as character traits that you would want or that you have for yourself. All right, so you have to do your own inner work. So the question isn't, can these men be rehabilitated? So we're going to just say no, okay? Because the very core of narcissism is, I'm not the problem, you are. You will notice that across every conversation or fight you've ever had. You're the problem. You're the crazy one. You're always making a big deal out of everything. I don't have an issue. You are the one with the issue. Everyone else thinks you're the issue. Everyone else sees you're the issue, right? You'll hear that theme across the board. So unless that thinking is changed through deep psychotherapy and self-accountability and the desire to want to change, it's not going to change. So ladies, that person that he is with now is dealing with the same fuckery, the same gaslighting, the same passive-aggressive comments, the same paper cuts, the comments, the lack of accountability, the laziness, all of it. Okay, so just so you know, because I hear that a lot from women. They're like, oh, he just moved on and started a whole new family, a whole new life, and, you know, it feels like a kick in the gut and all these things. Well, how about if you look at it like, you know, almost in a sense you feel pity for the woman that is having to deal with that now. You know, many of us feel like we would like to be able to warn her, right? Yeah, you know what you're getting into. But people have to learn their own lessons in life. And so part of breaking free from that is being able to see what they are doing in their dysfunction and realizing, I don't want a part of that anymore. I left because I don't want to be in dysfunction anymore. So why do I care what the hell he's doing? If he's changed, if he's doing things for her that he didn't do for me, if maybe he did finally see the light from all the rehabilitation I put him through to try and make him a better man. Maybe she's getting that stand-up version. No. So you also have to pay attention to how are they acting in the divorce, right? Every single woman, I have not worked with a single woman that's not being put through hell and through financial abuse and financial control and the kids being thrown around in chaos because the other parent doesn't care about putting the kids first, right? Divorce is already traumatic enough for these kids. It's a huge change. It's traumatic for us. It's up there with like death, right? Divorce in itself. But then when we add in the abuse and the trauma and that the kids continue to have to go through that chaos because of that other parent, you know, we have to be the solid ones as mothers. It's the only way, right? So that means you have to disconnect and detach from whatever it is that narcissistic person is doing. right? It's whatever they are doing is like, this is not my concern. This does not pertain to me unless it does. And I say to women who are going through this and they're worried about the safety of their kids, fight with everything you have. If you are truly scared for your children's physical safety, like, yes, there's emotional safety. Yes, if the person, that's obviously, yes, that's important, 100%. It's harder to make a case for that in the legal proceedings, right? And if the parent is just negligent and it's not overt physical abuse, right? That's the shitty thing. It's too bad that things are not looked at from the emotional well-being standpoint for children and their mental health, but it's not. And so as mothers, we have to discern like where we are going to really fight till we have nothing left to fight with for keeping the kids within your custody and in your care, right? So that's what I say to women if they are very concerned and they have a reason to be concerned due to past behavior that their children are going to be physically hurt. You need to fight for that. So that's what I say to that one if women ask me that. So you do have to be the protector. You do have to be the provider. You do have to be the one looking out for the children's safety. You're going to be the mother and father because you're it. And I'm going to tell you, that is not an easy thing to take on. But when we have chosen to bring kids into this world, that's what we've signed up for. We didn't sign up for the type of relationship we ended up in. No, we have to take responsibility for that version of us that got into that situation. And I just don't believe in any regrets, right? What's the point of having regrets? You just take them as lessons to do better for the future. Having regrets and ruminating about the past is nothing but a recipe for depression and feeling like shit. So there's no sense in having any regrets. Take everything you have been through and see the lesson in it so that you can do better next time and do better in the future. Because, one thing about this whole thing is you can definitely say you grow from it when you're doing the work, when you're applying yourself, when you're putting your mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, financial, career, health at the forefront before any relationship. This stuff is your priority. Everything changes. Your entire life will change when you start putting that focus where it needs to be and not on the past. That doesn't mean grief won't wash up and wash over you. Yes, it will. That doesn't mean that, regrets maybe of like wishing it could have been different, but it isn't and it won't be. You get to create the new different and what that is. And there is grief in a family breaking up, even if there was toxicity going on. It's that grief of the family unit that you were yearning for, that you really, really wanted. And most women I work with, that's the thing. They're not like, oh, I had kids just to be like, screw him. I'm just going to do this on my own. Like, we wanted to have that grow old together, raise our kids together for life scenario, right? And when that doesn't happen, there is grief and loss and letting go in that 100%. And so when women are too stuck on, the narcissist this and asshole this and devil spawn, you're not healing when you're in that space. You can still have the feelings that you have, but carrying around the anger and resentment is only making you sick. It's making you bitter. It's aging you. It's making you bitchy. It's making you haggard. It's all of that because you're hanging on to those toxic emotions when you need to actually heal them and move on. Like, women get so stuck years and years later, still they're talking about what he's doing, what he's not doing, right? I know in the very beginning when you're really going through it, you need an outlet, but you have to be very conscious of who that outlet is. It has to be someone that understands what you've been through, but who also is not going to keep enabling you to stay in the victim mentality. You've been victimized, but you get to choose, am I going to stay there? Am I going to stay feeling like a stuck, helpless victim at the mercy of the past? So this kind of went off on a different tangent when my first original thought was, answering the question or just kind of responding to the women that say NPD cannot be treated. Because what I was referring to was personality disorders, so like undiagnosed, untreated. So some personality disorders, like borderline personality, that can be treated. But of course, the same thing is you need to be getting treatment. You also need to be wanting to do better and want to see your blind spots and your dark shadows, and to be able to do the shadow work to realize like everything that I am accusing others of is probably something I need to look at within myself. And this is where narcissism comes in, because they are not doing that. They are projecting their stuff they don't want to see onto others, but they're not able to see it in themselves. So they might see it in someone else, but they won't see it in themselves. Whereas, I mean, I've been doing this type of work for like so long that it's automatic now. When I get annoyed with someone, or I get annoyed about something, or I get really reactive about something, I'm like, okay, where do I do this? It's a really sobering self-check to be, where do I do this? Because that's how you grow. We don't grow by pointing the finger and thinking, oh, the narcissist, this and that. Like, there's probably some behaviors in there you also have. And so that's where we also have to make peace with that part of ourselves, of our shadow, and doing that shadow work of self-inquiry of, where do I do that? Or where is that trait that I have that I don't want to see because I don't like that about myself? So I want to just project that onto everyone else, that they have it when I do too, but I don't want to look at that because it doesn't feel good to realize that I don't like that about myself. And so this is important also for being at peace and, this short lifespan that we have. Even if we live to 100, we're not here forever. So do you want to spend it being so hyper-focused on everyone else? Because that just creates inner chaos. And then when you have this inner chaos, you attract things on that same vibrational level that are like chaos. Believe me, I'm speaking from experience here. I realize I've been fueled by adrenaline and chaos for pretty much my whole entire life. So I'm speaking from more of a place of getting to that grounded awareness and working on that every day, and using that feeling of when I feel pulled into chaos or pulled into reactivity to stop and pause. We're not going to do it perfectly when we're hurt or when we feel defensive. We want to defend ourselves. It's also recognizing our like automatic go-to emotion. Some of us it's anger, some of us it's rage, irritability, which those are all anger, like frustration, anger. So it could be going directly to anger, or fuck them, or fuck that, or that kind of mentality. Or it can go into retreating and sadness and wanting to detach. And it might change over time. Whereas a lot of times when you're in these relationships, there's a lot of anger. There can be a lot of anger coming out of it, anger and resentment, and that's fine as long as it's not prolonged. We've talked about this. It's fine to have these things as long as it's not prolonged and it's not affecting your mental, emotional, and physical health and the people around you. But when we get to the softer emotions of the sadness under the anger, that can be our go-to, but then the go-to can then be to retreat. And we have to learn to work with that so that we don't stay there. We don't want to stay stuck in any one emotion. Even joy and happiness, we can't stay there forever. We can intentionally cultivate it. We can intentionally cultivate peace, but unless you're a monk somewhere in the middle of nowhere, I'd sure be peaceful 24/7 if I was just in nature all day and I had someone feeding me healthy plant-based meals all day and that's all I had to do. But again, it's like, how do you cultivate that and bring that into your life so you can have more of it? And you can have more moments of joy and magic and happiness and meaning, but that we're not seeking that on a permanent basis, because you're going to have to allow grief to come in, and sadness and irritability and feeling a numbness sometimes, or a feeling of discomfort and not knowing why, like feeling kind of low or weighed down. but you don't know why. And your mind is racing with all these thoughts, or it's fixating on something else. So this kind of ended up being a few things, but that's all right, because I'm sure that my riffing here, you've taken something out of this that you can go, oh yeah, and apply it. Or maybe it's something that just helped you shift a little bit. And, let's stop worrying and thinking about a narcissist can't be cured and all this, right? Like, I'm so tired of this conversation, but I wanted to bring it here and use it as a talking point to expand on, so that, number one, you're not living in the past wondering, has he changed? Is he changing? Did I do the right thing? Was it really abuse? All those things. So that's one thing. The second is to make sure that you are doing your own personal work, so you don't end up in marriage 2, 3, and 4 with another narcissist with NPD or worse, that is going to continue to keep you in survival mode and trauma response and keep your nervous system dysregulated, and you're an emotional basket case. We don't want you ending up in another situation like that. And so you need to be aware of your inner traits that make you susceptible to, number one, so this is the thing I want to say to you. If you're freaking out about the idea of ever dating again, many women are like, I never want to do it again. I hear you, but truthfully, you do come around. You eventually get to a place where you do want that. You just don't want what you experienced. And so this is part of the healing work. But the biggest thing is, it's not who comes in, it's who you allow to continue to stay, and how you discern who gets to continue to stay. And it's like what you will tolerate, what you're going to put up with, what it is that you know that you could never tolerate. And that takes time. And like, the biggest mistake we make as women is jumping in too soon, shacking up, moving in, playing house, blending kids. Let's get married again. Let's add another kid to the mix. Oh, you're an abusive narcissist. Oh, great. So now I have to uproot my kids again, myself again, my new kid again. Like, I've seen it all. It's absolute craziness. So ladies, if you're listening to this, do not go jumping in to something else and putting your kids in harm's way of another trauma. Like, they're already in a trauma from the previous divorce, from your divorce, and they're continuing to experience turmoil because they have to have contact with that parent still, right? And so you decide, oh, I'm going to find this new knight in shining armor, wonderful person that's going to ride in and save the day and be this kid's new parent, and we're going to live happily ever after. This is just ludicrous, because it's not going to happen like that, right? It takes intentionality and work, and it does require the right person. And you don't know that within a month or 2 months or a year or 2 years, or, it takes a long time. And a lot of hours and hours and hours of honest, clear communication and talking about these things with this person before you ever make any decision like that. Because I know you don't want to end up in that situation again, where whether it's abusive or not, just in a relationship that falls apart, and now you got to move your kids again. So if you have young kids, I am really speaking clearly to you, is really, I don't recommend, I have to say, I don't recommend blending as a whole. And that is a radical thing to say, because there are a lot of blended families, and maybe they're really joyous and healthy and dynamic and nourishing and happy, and everybody's getting along and parenting their children that they have separately and together, and it's all like the Brady Bunch. Sure, but I think that those people are rare. With the 70% divorce rate of remarriage with blending, especially. And I know the 70% rate is marriage after divorce, but I would say it's probably higher if you do that with kids, and even higher if both people come in with kids, and then probably even higher if you have your own kids mixed in. I'm just making a hypothesis here, because this is just truly what I think, and it's what I stand by and what I believe. Partly from past experience, and partly from learning from past experience, and from seeing so much of this actually happen, where women are getting married multiple times. Again, if you don't have kids, fly at it, do whatever you want. It's your life. You can pick up and move on however you want to do. But when you're bringing kids into a new situation, you really do need to be like so sure that this person is it. Like, we have talked about everything. We have clarified everything. You know, you really need to be having those conversations over a long period of time, years. And again, even then, you run the risk of it failing. So it is a risk. And is it one that you're willing to take for your kids' sake? So that's what I have to say on that. And I hope this has been helpful and you've taken something away from it. Really, my mission now is to help women who have come out of these relationships or a string of bad relationships with kids that were in the mix to not keep making the same stupid mistakes. We need to stop making these dumb mistakes of getting ourselves enmeshed with someone that is not good for us, that does not have our best interest at heart, and then getting ourselves trapped where, you know, there's no way out again. And I will say my best advice is to never get yourself into something that you can't easily get out of. When you've been out of one of these things, you need to prepare yourself. And this is hard because this is going off on another tangent. I'll be talking more about this stuff coming up, like the whole dating and all that. But you don't want to go into dating with all this armor on and just like terrified that every man is going to be like this, right? So there's part of this, you want to experience that joy and intimacy with someone, okay? So it's a separate issue. But you do need to go into it with your head on, less emotion, more logic, because you need to be able to see who this person is as a pattern and as a whole. It shouldn't get worse over time. Like, it shouldn't be, oh, we're having more fights over time. We're having more disconnect over time. Or the connection isn't there. Like, it should not be getting worse over time. And you won't know that until you've been with someone for quite a few years, quite a few seasons, at least 2 or 3 seasons of each season, to be able to see, is this someone I could do life with? Not just right now. I think we think a lot of times in the now, this would be fun. Let's move in together, save money on bills, or buy a huge house and throw our kids in there and let's just do it. But have you done the work to really know if that person is for you before you put your kids in that? All right. So that's what I'm really passionate about right now, is helping women to not make those same mistakes for their kids' sake. If you're ready to start taking some steps toward winning on the other side of divorce and after narcissistic abuse, I invite you to join my Win Your Divorce Challenge. You can head to leanneoten.com/win your divorce or click the link here in this episode's show notes, and I'll see you on the other side.